Yesterday, Jim sent me a screenshot of him in that video and made a comment about how at least his arms are going to look really big. And I told him, there is no screen on planet Earth that's going to make his arms look bigger than mine. So he wasn't happy about that. But my name is Cole. I'm the campus pastor here. I usually jump up here to start off our service. I usually bring you a bunch of really, really good knowledge, probably about Kanye West or Nova Nation or Chris Brown. Two of those songs in the last song we sing is written by a fake Chris Brown, not the real one. So I'm sorry about that. Really sorry about that. But today, actually, before I get into that, I don't even need to give a talk because we have proof that Jesus loves us. Notre Dame lost their bowl game. Yeah, all is right in the world. Yeah, I'm done. I can get off. I'm done. But like Jim said, all the campus pastors are teaching about something that we're trying to rethink or relearn or just some way that God's been working in our life. And if you guys know anything about my life over the past couple months, you know that it's been absolutely insane and there's a lot that I need to rethink. So on October 2nd, my dad had some pain where his liver is, and so he went to the doctor, and that day they found lumps on his liver. And they didn't know where it came from, what it looked like, if it was even cancerous. And so they started doing a bunch of tests, running through a bunch of different things. They did everything possible to figure out what was going on. And as the month progressed, we later found out that it was cancer that started in his stomach and then metastasized to his liver. And through all of that, we're trying to figure out, like, what do we do? What does this look like? Our dad was awesome. My brothers are here. My mom's here. Our dad was awesome. And through all that, it's like your world kind of gets shook and kind of is not really what it is. It gets shook, right? And I was super close to my dad, and at this point, we're 2 months out from having a kid, and all my dad wanted was to be a grandpa and to make it to that date. And so as the month goes on, we realize things are getting bad. November hits, and we get news that he has about 2 months left to live. We get that news a couple days before I was supposed to go on a trip to Africa to our partner Musana in Uganda. And at this point, as I hear this news, I'm weighing all my options. Do I actually go? What does that look like? Should I not go? Like, what if I miss something? What if I miss out on something? So I had a couple conversations with him, and after those conversations, he was adamant, no, you need to go, you need to do this, you need to go. And Africa has always been a place for me to process. It's quiet there, your cell phone doesn't work, it's lovely. But I end up going to Africa whenever something bad happens in our life. Either I'm going to Africa and something bad happens here, or I'm in Africa and something bad happens here, or I come back and something bad happens. Every time I go, God uses it as a place to process things and walk through things and learn some things. And so I knew walking into this that it was going to be hard, but this was a chance for me to regroup and to come back to face some really, really hard stuff. To face my dad dying, to have our baby come into this world, to run this place, and to make sure that through all of that I don't burn out and burn our marriage out as I go through all that. So I'm in Uganda, and every once in a while you get Wi-Fi, and at the perfect time I had Wi-Fi because my wife was able to call. And she called and she said, hey, you need to get back here. Things took a turn for the worse, and your dad isn't going to last very long. So at that point, I flip into go mode. I got to figure it out, right? I'm halfway across the world. So I get everything settled at Musana. I book a new flight. I get a ride back to Kampala, which is a 4-hour ride, and the next flight comes in 19 hours. So I had a lot of time to think. It's really fun. And this whole time, all that's running through my mind is, okay, it's time to be strong now. Time to be strong for your dad, for your brothers, for your mom, for your wife, for your dad's office, for your staff back here at work, and for all of you guys here in Aurora. It's time to get your stuff in order and be ready to roll because it has all hit the fan. And I'm the only one that can keep the plates spinning, and I'm the only one that gets to keep things held together, and I'm the only one that people are going to look to for next steps. So it's time to step up and be stronger. Everybody else is going to fail. That runs through my mind over and over and over again. And that's a lonely feeling, and it's also a selfish feeling. But being strong is all that I could focus on. I had to show that I had power because that's what strength is. Be powerful. Take control, don't drop the ball, and just hold it together. Be strong. And that's selfish because somehow I'm arrogant enough to think that nobody else cares enough as I do, nobody else is strong enough or as capable enough as I am. So I take it all on and I burn myself out, and I flatten my wife when my fuse is short, and I leave people out in the process that when they might be doing it better, or there might be a chance for them to grieve. And that isn't the type of strength that we want to strive for in chaos, right? But I think we all do this. And as I've been walking through these past couple months, I realize that I'm not the only person who's walked through a season like this. We've all been through really, really hard things, and it's our own version of hard. So don't compare yourself to somebody else's or to mine or whatever. Compare yourself to yourself. What you've walked through is really, really hard. That could have been losing a family member, could have been losing your job. Maybe your spouse wants out, or your kids have lost all respect for you. Nobody listens to a word you say. School's hard. Whatever that is, you walk through hard stuff. And during those times, we do one of two things. First, we draw up our own strength. We figure out what we need to get done. We power up. We point our head in a direction, and we push forward. No matter how many people we flatten in the process, we're going to get what we're going to get. Or second, we quit, we abdicate, and we surrender. We think through all the hard stuff in front of us, and you just think, I'm glad somebody else was willing to push through that, but honestly, that's just too hard. I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with it. And so we abdicate our responsibility. And in doing so, whatever strength we have, we let go of. And we just choose to be passive, just coast right through. That could be a tough conversation with a loved one that needs to be had, but it's just too hard. Or you're angry about something, but it's not worth fighting for, so you just stuff it. And over again, you get more and more angry, but you keep stuffing it. And in the hard stuff, we run. We run to drugs, we run to alcohol, we run to porn, video games, work, kids, whatever it is, we run to stuff when things get hard and we get scared. And you give up. Or if you're really good, you do like I do, and you do both of those things. I've flattened Taylor, but I've also ignored her. I've checked out at home, and so we fight about the fact that my wife needs me there, but I'm too wrapped up in my own stuff to even let her in. I'm checked out at work. I've blown up on my family, and I feel this compulsion to just get everything done myself and not trust anybody. I've been financially irresponsible, and I've just not wanted to look at anything that I'm struggling with on the inside, because right now, if I'm going to be strong, I have to get all of this other stuff done and taken care of before I can ever look at myself. Rest really isn't an option. And if rest isn't an option, then real strength really isn't an option, right? So I just coast. And if you've noticed so far, I haven't mentioned Jesus one time. Usually when life gets hard for me, I get angry at Jesus, I blame him, and I stuff my finger in his chest. But I think I've matured a little bit, and I didn't go there, I just shoved him to the side. As I've been grieving, as I've been processing this, I don't want to bring Jesus into it. I'm going to take care of it myself and just get it done. I have no real feelings toward him. I have no friendship with him. I don't even look to him. I just feel blah. So at that point, I'm in Musana, and I'm gearing up to what life really looks like, and I'm reading through Psalms, and on day one in Musana, I land on Psalm 91. And Psalms is a book in the Old Testament, and most of the Psalms are written by David, and most of the book is written up as praises towards God. And when I say David, David is King David, like King of Israel David. And most of the times that he's writing, they're written in hard times and in trial. And David's just like me, because most of his life he just made poor decision after poor decision after poor decision, and it led him to places where his bad choices had the results that were warranted for that. But in Psalm 91, it focuses on the confidence that he has in God through all challenges. And so I start reading this, and I have this sarcastic tone about it. How good for this dude that he turns to God instantly when times get hard, because I don't. And wouldn't it be cool if I could do that? What I'm really feeling is like, I'm just trying to gather all the strength that I can gather to walk into something really, really hard. It'd be really sick if God would just show up, but as I look around, he's not around. So I start reading it again and again and again, because I can't get past the first two verses without rethinking everything there is to think about strength. And so those two verses are all that I want to walk us through today. So in the beginning of it, he writes, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." So verse 1 starts out, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." If I'm being honest, as we've been covering this with God kind of lifestyle that Jim's always talking about, don't tell Jim, but most of the time I think it's bogus. I've been struggling with it. I don't feel like God is with me most days, and I don't feel like I have this conversational relationship with him because I get busy, I get distracted, and life comes at you fast. And I always have the great excuse of I don't have time. I barely have a conversational relationship with Taylor, and I can see her standing in front of me during the day. But this word dwells that he writes here hits me really hard. And the definition of dwell is to live in a specified place. But the second definition is to think, speak, or write at length about a particular subject, especially one that is a source of unhappiness, anxiety, or dissatisfaction. And as I'm reading this, something clicks on. The idea of conversing with Jesus honestly has seemed corny with me. Like, oh, here's my buddy. But then when I started picturing it like I'm having a conversation that's really, really hard, really difficult, I'm arguing with him to see why he wants whatever it is the way that he wants it. Or I've been wrestling over with, I don't get it. I don't get why my dad had to get taken. I don't get why it had to be this type of timing. I don't get it at all. And I keep thinking through that over and over and over again, and I'm yelling at God. I'm driving in the car. I'm yelling at God when really I'd rather just be talking to my dad on the phone. But I think doing that, I think arguing and yelling and having really hard discussions with God seems a lot more realistic than thanking him all the time as I'm doing the dishes, you know? And I think I should be using my head. I think that's what this is telling me. I should be thinking through these things instead of just blindly saying, oh, God promises to use all things for the good, so I'm good with it. I'm just going to kick back, relax, and that's good with me. I think that's BS. I know that he's going to use this for the good in some way, shape, or form. I just don't know how, and I don't know why he had to do it this way. And so as I'm thinking through this, as I'm thinking through dwelling in him, I can either sit here in that anger by myself and let it consume me, or I can dwell on it with him and wrestle with him over it. And as I'm wrestling through this why can't I trust him? Why do I not trust that what he's doing is good? Why can't I believe that? Why do I keep dwelling on and struggling and thinking through this really, really hard stuff? It hits me. I'm actually doing what David writes in here. I'm actually working through the hardest parts of my life, the most confusing times in my life, the way that God wants me to, by dwelling and arguing in him, wrestling with him. And I'm supposed to use my brain, not throw it away. That's what this is telling me. I'm supposed to think through really hard stuff, not passively throw my hands up and just say, whatever God has, I'm good with it. Because I think if we're honest, if we said that before, we'd call BS on it right now. When those words come out of our mouth, we don't mean them. Otherwise, we'd let go of control, and I don't think anyone in this room lets go of control. But I think here God's encouraging us to think and process with him, to dwell and to stew in the really hard parts of our lives, but to do that, it's going to take practice. And then we jump into verse 2, which is really what I've been processing through. It says, I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. This is what's been screwing me up over and over and over again to make me rethink strength. So he starts with verse 1 talking about dwelling in God, talking through hard stuff, and then he says, I will say to the Lord. So while he's arguing and having those hard conversations, he's still talking to the Lord and praising him, and the conversation goes on to him saying, you are my refuge and my fortress. A refuge is a place to be safe and sheltered from pursuit, danger, and trouble. A place for protection and asylum, a place of sanctuary, or a place to heal. And refuge, like finding refuge right here, what he's talking about is a selfish act. He doesn't say, you're our refuge. He says, you are my refuge. And it's an intentional choice to find healing and safety for yourself in that moment, when you're willing to claim that. And I suck at that. I was thinking of it when you're on a plane. I always make fun of the people that stand in the aisle, you know, with the whatever, seatbelts. I don't even know what they're called because I don't wear them. It's fine. But they tell you to hook your oxygen up first and then to hook the child up next to you. And I think the reason for that is if you're struggling, if you're dying, if you can't breathe, you are worthless helping somebody else. You need to take care of yourself first. And your need to heal anybody and help anybody else is impossible if you don't have strength and if you find refuge and heal. You have to do that first. And I made a commitment today to not talk about Villanova or anything like that, but I didn't make a commitment to talk about Jordan Peterson, so I talk about him twice. And if you know me, you know that I love Jordan Peterson, and this lines up perfectly with one of his rules for life, which is to clean up your room, whether metaphorically or literally. Taylor's here, so I will clean the room later. You can't help anybody or take care of anything or really take responsibility for anything unless you can take care of the smallest thing entrusted to you, which is your room, yourself. And you have to do that by finding refuge. What does God as your refuge actually look like to you, and how do you do it intentionally? And a fortress is a military stronghold, especially a strongly fortified town fit for a large garrison or a lot of people. A heavily protected and impenetrable building, a person or thing not susceptible to outside influence or disturbance, a place to launch out of. It's not just a place to sit in and hope that the walls hold up. God is telling you there's stuff worth fighting for. Get up. Stuff that he has entrusted you with. And it's time for us to step up and get angry for those things. Get up and fight with me. Fight with God. That's what he's saying. Do you look at God like that? I'm not sure if I usually do. So right here it's telling us God has a place for us to find safety, a place of peace and a place to heal, but he's also a place for us to stand our ground, to fight, and then step out of that and take the fight forward. But that would also mean that he's the strong place for us to dwell in, not made by ourselves. And once you take the fight out, you're usually you're supplied by the fortress, you're supplied by the stronghold, and then you get back to it whenever you need rest. It's this thing that moves back and forth. Strength is from and for God, and it leads us back to him. David doesn't look at this and say, my refuge or my fortress. But I think that's how I've lived my life. God's either one or the other. He can't be both. He can't be this place of safety, but also this badass place of fight. He's either a place where I run to when I get myself in trouble and I need protection or healing. Usually I run there sheepishly like, hey, I screwed up again. You already know that. Help me. Just take care of it. Or I look at him like he's so strong. He's a warrior. He has my back no matter how half-cocked whatever I'm about to do is. So I step out of him, outside of him as a fortress, and use my own strength to fight my own battle. And that's what my life is over and over and over again. And I rarely use him as a stronghold to operate out of. But what he does say is, you are my refuge and my fortress. He's both at the same time. He's a place for me to heal, to rest, and also to fight for the people in my life. A place for me to step up in my own responsibility that I'm called to and to do it in him, not out of my own strength. And that's what he used Musana for this past time when I was there. It was a place of refuge to recoup and regroup and get ready to roll, as well as a place to gear up and stand up and step into the fight back home. And that's really hard for me to wrap my head around. I don't know how to rest very well. You guys know that. And I don't know how to fight out of a strength that isn't my own either. I just know how to find strength in my own power and use it till it burns up. So then my mind, after all that, jumps to a question of, how do I get to a spot of finding rest in God as a refuge, as well as find my strength in him as my fortress without any of my own strength? And David's a lot smarter than me, and he answers it in the exact same breath. He says, I will say to the Lord, my refuge and fortress, my God in whom I trust. So what he's saying is to really believe that God is my refuge and fortress, that happens through trust. Through all this chaos, through all this hurt, through all this losing my dad, through whatever we're walking in here with, we're supposed to just walk in and trust God. How do we do that? So I looked up trust. And trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something, a complete confidence, assurance, conviction, or reliance. So out of all of this, trust is the real focal point here. It's the real form of strength. That's what we have to get to. But if we logically break that apart, trusting takes knowing what you're trying to trust, right? You can't just trust something that you don't know. And to know something takes time. In this case, it's taking time to know who God truly is. And that means that would take training. Like when you're an athlete, you don't just jump into whatever sport you're jumping into and you're good at it. You have to train consistently. It takes time. With a commitment to an end goal to make any strides at getting things done, just set into muscle memory so that way you can operate out of them. And when you can actually train consistently, that takes discipline. And so that's where I've landed. As I've been thinking through what strength is, everything that strength is rooted in so far has stemmed from discipline. And that's, if I look at my life, where my strength has fallen apart. Again, back with Jordan Peterson, I love it. Somebody asked Jordan Peterson if he believes, trusts, or has faith in God. And his first answer is always, it depends what you mean. But he finally answers that, I'm living my life as if there were a God. Which comes back to Hebrews 11 where it says, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. That's the definition of faith and trust. So I have to have the faith, or I have to have confidence in what we hope for and the assurance of what I do not see if I'm going to live my life and make good choices, if I'm going to do that and love Taylor, if I'm going to do that and be a dad, or to bury my dad, or to face the next storm as if Jesus is who he says he is and is going to keep every single promise. And that's not easy or simple or automatic. I have to have discipline in that. And like everything else, growth takes time. And for things to change, I have to do something different than what I've been doing. So when you go to the gym and you lift, you can't just do the same thing over and over again, or you plateau and you stop growing. So we have to change things up if we want different results. And I've lacked discipline in like every area of my life for the past couple months. Discipline is the activity or experience that provides mental or physical training, which if we're looking at it in a mental capacity here, it's the ability to dwell in the shelter of the Most High. And I've skipped past actually training, conditioning, and taking care of what I need to, and I've jumped straight into my own power and hoped that it's going to hold out. But it burns quickly, and it's empty, and all it does is flatten the people around me. Because God isn't calling us to be powerful. He's calling us to dwell in him. That's where we're going to find true strength, and I don't think that I'm alone in my lack of discipline. You guys have been connecting the dots as I've been talking. We can look at all areas of our life, every single area of our life, and see where we took the easy route. We went around discipline. We went around what was hard just to get stuff done and hope that it was okay. And some days that's really all that we can do. But we can't just sit in life being okay with a lack of discipline, a lack of dwelling in God, a lack of dwelling in Him as a place of healing and as a stronghold, because nobody wants to just be okay. And being more disciplined feels scary. When you go to the gym for the first time and you go to bench, you don't throw on 325 and just start repping it out. You start small and you throw 5 pounds on and 10 pounds on and you keep adding the weight up. And you have to go slow. You can't take too much on at once. But it's the new year and we do that with our New Year's resolutions all the time. We go hard, we get sore, and we quit. There's no shortcuts except for reindeer antler spray and really good pre-workout. But if we're honest and we take a step towards a small 5-pound win, if we just take a small step towards something, we can win. If you know where you're weak, let's take a step to make it stronger. Now, I've just told you that all of our strength comes from God. That's what this psalm outlines. But that doesn't mean that God wants us to be passive in that process, just sitting back and waiting for Him to do what He does. He wants us in the fight with Him. When you're a warrior, you still train and you still fight. No matter how tough or not tough the fortress is, you still have to fight. We need to take steps to be more disciplined because in different areas of our life, and they're all different, we all fall short in some way, shape, or form. Maybe that's in your marriage. And the first step for you is to just come home every night, maybe for the first time in a while. Maybe when you get home, you shut your phone off and the TV doesn't get turned on until you at least ask each other how your day was. Or maybe that's with your job, that at 5, no matter what, you stop working because there's people at home that need you more than the people at work. But we have to then realize that our worth can't come from our job, and that's really hard to do. Or maybe it's your health. You've given up on a schedule. Eating healthy is way too hard. And going to the gym takes too much time, so you've given up. Maybe you've given up on your kids. It's too hard. What you were doing wasn't working, so why even bother? They don't value you anyway. Who cares if I even come home? Maybe it's your patience, or your anger, or your sexuality, your drive, your time, your finances. Whatever that is, you've lost any desire to get better or to train at them. So any shot at being disciplined is gone. And after all that comes our spirituality, and that's for sure out the window at this point. There's no shot at dwelling in God as a refuge or a fortress because we don't even know how to start the damn conversation. I don't. Whatever it is that you're thinking about, whatever you aren't disciplined in, you aren't alone. I'm standing up here listing things off, not hoping to connect with everybody else in the room because all of that swirls around in my mind every day. And if you're being honest, it swirls around in yours too. So what can we do? Where do we go once we figure out that something in our life isn't working? Pick one area, pick one place, and dwell in it, and take a step towards it to work on it. Is that your family, your wife, your kids? Call a counselor this week. We have plenty of them to point you to. Call one. Is it your spirituality or your sexuality? Come back in the next 6 weeks over this next series, and let's tear through it. Pick a ministry that we have here and volunteer for 1 semester. Join a group, walk through this with other people, go to AA, do something, take a step. What is one thing that you can take a step towards? And I think all of that comes back to where David ended verse 2. We have to get to a spot of trust. A spot of trusting Jesus for who He says He is, and that He will back up everything that He's promised to do, including taking care of you, taking care of me. Going back to that bench metaphor, when you finally get to a point where you can't handle the weight, you need to lift it to push forward. You've done the work that you have to do, but you have to keep going past what you can do so you get a spotter. And that spotter won't put too much on the bar, and your spotter, if he's a good one, never leaves you while you're moving the weight. He keeps it from crushing you, and he gives you what you need to endure to get it done. And you aren't going to let anyone spot you that you don't trust. So if you don't trust Jesus, you're not going to choose Him. But what if we took a step towards that? In 1 Corinthians 10:13, it says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. And I think enduring it is what we need to chase after. And the only reason that we can do that, all that we have to hang our hat on, is if we dive through all the questions and the problems that we have with Christianity and the Bible and all of that, we have to first look at the only promise that matters. And it's the promise that Jesus made when he told us that he would go and he would die on a cross, and 3 days later he would rise from the grave and conquer it. If that isn't true, then none of this, none of what I've said, none of what you're going to read is worth it. You need to pick up your stuff and go. That's the only place to start. But if it is true, if he did do that, if he died for our sins, and if he rose from the grave like he promised that he would do, then all of it is possible. Everything. Everything that he promised to take care of, and your ability to find safety in his refuge and your strength in his fortress is a piece of cake. And it would also be true that everything you're struggling with, mentally, physically, spiritually, he promises to dwell in that with us. And that's easy to do if what he said he would do, he did. And so once we can get on board with that, I think the next logical question is, what do I do next? As a man or as a woman, who does God say that I am, and what do I do with it? And so that's what we're going to pick up next week. But until then, we need to figure out where we're coming up short, where we're undisciplined, and where we're weak. And then we need to dwell in it with Jesus and take steps this week towards that discipline. And I don't know what those steps are for each of you, because I don't have this figured out either. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to ask for help more, and I'm trying to take help when it's offered. I'm trying to delegate things out more and trying to get to know people better so I can trust them. People have been offering help to me, and instead of taking their help, I want to prove that I'm capable enough, so I'm working on taking help more so I don't burn myself out anymore. And I'm seeking advice from the men in my life that I trust instead of just trying to do it on my own. And at the end of the day, I try to think through the day and think of how I operated in my life and what didn't work. Because if I wake up and make the same mistake the next day, it's just another bad day. So what's that for you? What's one area of your life that you can look at and pick that this week you can take a step towards changing, towards dwelling on? And are you willing to bring Jesus into that struggle? I'm done. But Dan has a super dope song that he's going to sing right now. And I've been listening to it over and over again over the past couple months. And we've never done it here, but the lyrics are gold. The song starts out, "Are you hurting and broken within? Overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide." When I left for Africa, we thought that we had 2 months left, and on November 13th, my dad passed away. It was a month after everything started. And that last line has been just so good. All that I can picture is my dad sprinting towards Jesus and Jesus sprinting back. His arms are open wide. But the rest of those lyrics, does that sound like you? Because it's for sure me. Through all my hurt, through all my brokenness, and all my lack of rest, I just need to rest. Through that, Jesus takes a step towards me. Jesus is calling. And he's taking a step towards you. So what do we do? Once we get on board with those first two lines of the psalm, that Jesus is our refuge and our fortress, when we can get on board that Jesus is who he says he is and has conquered death and everything else, the rest of the psalm says this about our lives. So stand with me. You can stand with me. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. And I'm going to read the rest of this psalm. And let's see if it can sink in. And see if it can actually be true about our lives. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and on the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation.